John Morris turned $10,000 from a business plan competition into Rise Interactive, scaling it to nearly $40 million in revenue before exiting. Now, as founder of Fiscal Advocate, he helps business service companies grow profitably using financial data. John shares which three KPIs actually matter, how to benchmark profitability, and most importantly, how to unlock cash for growth without outside capital. If you want to build a more profitable business, this conversation delivers.
All right. Welcome to Freelancer Training on how to find more direct clients, a podcast hosted by myself, Jason Willis-Lee. This is the show that makes digital marketing easier and more fun using just the perfect combo and the right dose of business strategy and tech. I'm your host, Jason Willis-Lee, digital marketing enthusiast and medical translator. And today I'm very thrilled to welcome another special guest. His name is John Morris. John brings a very unique perspective to our discussion today. John, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time. How are you
Jason,
today?
it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
That's very kind of you to come. Just very quickly, as an icebreaker, John, how did you get to where you are today? Could you just sort of give us paint a few brushstrokes of your personal and business journey from starting out to where you are today?
Absolutely. So I actually been in digital marketing from 1996 to 2020. When I was 22 years old, I graduated in 1996. I wanted to go into consulting. I made it to the final interview of pretty much every major consulting firm and got rejected by every major consulting firm. And in January of that year, I learned about this new thing called the internet and decided to create a computer company. And I use the word computer company because I knew nothing about computers. I just was nerdy enough that people thought I knew a lot more than I did. And I started doing everything from like network infrastructure to building the ugliest websites you could ever find. And then people kept on asking me, well, how's anyone going to find my website? And it was 1996. I didn't know the answer. No one knew the answer. So I started researching digital marketing and quickly became truly one of the pioneers of that industry. And started my first agency right out of school. It ended up failing. So in 2021, I shut the doors down. And then in 2024, I started a new agency called Rise Interactive. And that one was a big success. I grew it from zero to almost 40 million in revenue before exiting 5 years ago. And now what I do is I really try to train people and teach them some of the secrets I did at Rise by leveraging financial data to make better business decisions. And so I own a company called Fiscal Advocate. We do general bookkeeping. We do something called FP&A, which is financial planning analysis. So it's budgeting, forecasting, cash flow analysis, monthly insights, resource planning. And then we do strategic planning work and executive coaching.
That's an amazing story, John. How did you go from 10K? Because I think that came from a business
Yep.
plan competition, the one that you turned into 40. Just talk us through that journey from scaling. How can you talk about it in terms of lead generation? You started with 10K and then it went to multi eight
Yep.
figures.
So a couple things. One, I want to talk a little bit about timing. Uh, Rise Interactive was my second digital agency. And a lot of the things I did were the exact same things I did at Net Traffic, my first agency. The difference was the market and the ability to identify places to spend money in a lead gen type format that actually would resonate and be able to deliver scale. And so the timing was a really important component to that success of that business. But what I always tell people is when you start a business and you're selling, you need to figure out one method to acquire customers, and you need to be able to do that at scale. And when I started Rise, I started just cold calling, and I would reach out to prospective clients, and I got practically no interest. But then I started reaching out to potential partners. We only did digital marketing, mainly search engine marketing. So search engine optimization and paid search. And we didn't do any web development. And I started to reach out to web development companies. And I basically said, I was like, look, we don't do any web development. You guys don't do any search marketing or digital marketing. I can refer business to you and you can refer business back to me. And I found that that was incredibly successful. And not only was it incredibly successful, but if you're building a website, you have to optimize it for the search engines. And so when someone would answer my phone call or my email, they almost immediately had an opportunity for us. And so for the first probably 7, 8 years of the business, that's how we got our phone to ring, is we called on web development companies, and then we would get a few mega companies that would be sending me 5 to 10 leads a week. And so that was a big part of it. The other thing that we did was we started calling on much larger competitors. And, in this space, all of us had minimums, and if someone had a minimum of $20,000 a month to work with them, and I had a minimum of $1,000 a month, there was a wide range of leads that they could send me that they didn't want. And so that was the second way I got my phone to lead. So channel marketing was really at the core our initial method for success. Later on, we evolved. And the problem with channel marketing is as our minimum started to grow, a lot of the leads that they would send our way, we no longer were interested in. But we wanted to service our partners' customers. And so we had this weird situation where we were taking on clients that weren't really good fits for us anymore, but we thought of it as a portfolio and how we, make sure that our partner relationship went really well. So then we started a direct sales and marketing approach, and we really verticalized. We had a hospital system as a client of ours, and we loved hospital systems. At that moment in time, they were laggards in terms of sophistication. They were really nice to work with. They had decent budgets, and the budgets were growing. And so we developed an entire campaign for hospital marketing. And we would go to the hospital marketing conference and we would win awards for hospital marketing. And so, that was another method. A third method, and I'll leave it at this one because I could probably go on all day on this, is we took a big approach to awards. And we took awards in 4 categories: growth awards, digital marketing awards, best place to work, and innovation. We had a database of about 500 different awards. And our thought process was that if you win one award, no one's really going to remember you. But if you can win 30 awards a year and you can constantly be in the news about, hey, we just got recognized for paid search agency of the year. We just got recognized as one of the top 10 digital marketing agencies in the world. And we won this for best place to work. And we were on the Inc. 500 for 9 years in a row. You had all these different things that created momentum. We did that in a very purposeful manner. And I lied. I'm going to give you one more. The other one was, and this ties into what I'm doing now, budgeted for growth. And, a lot of companies would come to me that were competitors, but substantially smaller after Rise scaled and grew. And they would ask me, like, how did you scale and grow? And my answer was, really came back to them with a question. It's like, what percent of your revenue do you spend in sales and marketing? And I tend to get the same answer. It's like, oh, we don't spend anything in sales and marketing. It's all word of mouth. And we had a different approach. We wanted the highest percent of revenue possible to go to sales and marketing. And if you could spend more on sales and marketing than your competitors, then you have a big advantage. And so that became a big part of how we focused. And we knew all the numbers in every single area to figure out how we could constantly get more budget into sales and marketing.
Could you extrapolate, John, those 4 lead generation techniques for our specific audience? So we have a lot of translators, interpreters, copywriters listening to me. It's an industry that's very sensitive to tech. So not
Yeah.
surprisingly, tech has had the latest wave has had a big impact on the industry. Could you extrapolate how you would go about the lead generation methods today, but for another industry? So, for example, an AI sensitive industry like the translation and interpreting industry, how would any of those leads? I mean, could we put ourselves in for awards, for example? Could we go in for digital marketing? Do we need to get into other niches? What are the sort of lead generation tactics you would advise for our audience?
Do, do you mind if I take this in a little bit of a different direction and then I'll go back to that?
Yeah,
You
of
know,
course.
the first thing I would say is your number one sales goal is never lose a customer due to performance. And you have mentioned that you're in a disruptive industry, that there's new technology that is changing things.
Correct.
And so I believe that you can't have a goal unless you budget for it. So the question you have to ask is, do you want to be disrupted or do you want to be a disruptor? And so the first thing that I would say is the perceived value of your service offering is changing due to new technology. And so I would be thinking about how do I have an AI first approach to my service offering? And, you know, I typically recommend for all service-based companies that 5% of their revenue is dedicated to investing in R&D. And so you need to be innovating in order to, really make sure that you have good systems in place to make your product relevant for the future. So that would be my starting point. Because if you're generating leads, but right now the perceived value of your service is decreasing because of competition, that lead generation program is not going to really help that much. I'll just give you a really good example. At Rise, we tended to work with enterprise companies, but they were national companies in the United States. And every year we would get 2 to 3 leads that were global. And in order to service a global customer, to service someone in Madrid, Spain, well, I need someone who speaks Spanish. I need someone who's in Madrid. I need someone who understands the cultural nuances of that market. And our win rate was close to 0%. I think it was above 0%, but it was as close to 0% as possible. And the reason why is my entire staff was in Chicago.
Right.
So eventually we expanded into Argentina, and we expanded into Mexico. But, I didn't have a true global presence. You compare that to a holding company, which are these major mega marketing agencies. They might have offices in 200 different locations across the globe, and they might have 15 different languages or not or more. So they were just better situated to handle that type of customer. And so I think that you're at a point now where lead gen is really important. However, I'll be focusing on making sure that you have a relevant service offering to the future of tomorrow. So that's the first thing. So now let's get into how do you develop a lead generation program? The first thing is it starts with your budget. How much money do you have to spend? And the less amount, or as the budget gets smaller, your target audience should be getting smaller. So you might want to regionalize and really focus on one particular market. Focus on a specific vertical. Make sure that you have a right to win within that category. So the first thing is just who are you calling is a really important component to this. And don't try to go a mile wide and an inch deep. Go an inch wide and a mile deep. I recognize that, I'm talking about the US system as opposed to the metric system, but
Yes.
hopefully everyone gets the idea.
Sure.
And then the next thing is a lot of the tactics I just recommend will still work. So a channel marketing strategy typically is the lowest cost to acquiring a customer. If you can find decent size marketing channel partners that can drive leads your way, that is my general starting point that you should be looking at. Can you find associations that are putting events on that you can sponsor? That would be another avenue. Awards is always going to work, but you have to make sure that you're award worthy. I was fortunate that we were growing, so I could be on all the growth awards every single year because I built a company that was growing. in order to become a best place to work, you actually have a great place to work in order to win
Mm.
those awards. So it wasn't just we wanted to win awards, we reversed engineered what was necessary to win the award. Give an example. One of my favorite, or most proud of awards was getting recognized by Forrester repeatedly as one of the top 10 digital marketing agencies of the globe. It was a 3-year process before we were eligible to win that award. And so it's not like, oh, I want to go win this. If I go into acting, I'm not just going to get an Oscar, right off the bat. Most likely I won't get a job. But
Yes.
but that's kind of the things that you have to think about as the investments you make.
By channel, John, do you mean social media platform? What do you mean
No,
specifically?
channel marketing is identifying complementary businesses that will refer leads to you. Or if you embrace a specific technology, can you get those tech companies to recommend you as the best implementer of their technology?
Mm, got it. Okay. Um, let's talk about systems, John. What kind of systems do you have in place that typically help you scale? So we typically talk about working on your business rather than in the business. Getting out of the founder is typically in the way.
Yeah.
There's not enough delegation going on. What kind of systems have you implemented that you could recommend for somebody at our listeners level? So it could be most people are at a mid five level or mid high five, possibly six-figure business revenue level. What kind of systems would help that kind of business scale further? Well, is it scalable, first of all?
Yeah.
What determines scalability, and then how do you implement the systems to get that kind of scalability?
So a few different things. I'm going to start talking about your leadership team and your org structure. So I happen to know the service space, the professional service space really well. That's like my core expertise. There are 4 major functions that report into the CEO. Head of growth, so sales and marketing. Head of client service, so the people who take care of all the client work and make sure that they renew and you upsell them. Your back office, so HR, legal, corporate IT, general administrative expenses, and finance. And then innovation and R&D. So those are the core functions. And when you're a small company, most likely the CEO is also the heads of those 4 different groups. And so the first thing I want people to recognize is, when are they doing the jobs of those different people? And how can you start, even if it's a junior person, how can you start removing yourselves from those different 4 areas and start building a leadership team that can manage those specific areas? Otherwise, you're not going to scale. The next thing is, um, so the next thing after that is having a really good annual planning and quarterly planning process. 2026 is around the corner. Everyone should have a revenue goal that's built based on reality, a profit margin goal, a cash goal, and what I call as an infrastructure goal, meaning that your business is going to be better at the end of the year than it was at the beginning of the year because you're going to make investments into the business. One of those
Mm,
investments might be hiring a leader, and taking the CEO out of one of those 4 major seats. Or it might be investing in AI so that you become an AI first organization, or it might be investing in a lead generation program. And so once you have your annual plan done, then it's coming up to quarterly planning. And ideally, you're coming up with 90-day initiatives that will help you achieve your annual goals. So that would be, so you have org structure, then annual and quarterly planning. And I would say the third one would be, and I'll add one more after this, is you need a budgeting and forecasting system. So a budget is what you originally set out to do, and a forecast is revising your projections as time goes on. So I recommend quarterly so that you are always having a really good pulse on your expenses. And then the last one is, in 2026, I fired 50% of the people I hired. because I knew what I wanted. I wanted people who were analytical. And what I realized is that they were just really good at making me think they were analytical. But once they actually got the job, they weren't analytical. And I actually created an exam that you had to take after that at a 22% pass rate in order to even interview with us. But I run my businesses like a professional sports team. And if you think about a professional sports team, they put a crazy amount of time into the recruiting to make sure they get the right people. They typically have coaches for every single area, you know. Um, then they'll move people to different positions based on where they think that is the best fit for them. And if they're not able to develop, they'll make the tough decision and bring someone else new on. And so, when you're small, you can't afford to have a B or a C player. They all have to be A players. And so those become the core things that I would think about.
What is your biggest challenge, John? What keeps you up? What's your pillow pain point? What keeps you up at night? What's your biggest challenge in business
So,
today?
so in my business today, I believe that we're doing an amazing job innovating. I think our clients are really happy and our retention is great. I think the quality of our team is amazing. And my biggest struggle, particularly this year, is on the new business side, specifically on sales cycle and win rate. Now, to put this in perspective, we're 9.5 months into the year, and I'm 20,000 and change away from what I targeted. I'm up 50%. So it's like I'm having a great year. However, the amount of energy it is taking right now to close deals is just much harder than I am used to.
Mm,
I don't know how much of that has to do with the trade wars and the deficit, or the trade wars and the tariffs and all the things that are going on with the US government right now, or if there are other factors. But I could just say that it's been a grind. Here's the example I like to give. I played rugby in college, and I went to a tiny school, 1,600 students, and we were in the Midwest Championship. If we won this game, we went to nationals, and we were going up against a massive university. And player to player, they had probably 2 to 4 inches of height on us per roll. They probably had 30 to 40, pounds. Like everyone was just bigger. And when they would tackle us, it kind of felt like they were digging us 6 inches into the ground, like it
mm,
hurt.
mm,
When we would tackle them, I would kind of like hold on to their legs for like dear life, and like they would drag me like 3 to 5 feet, and they would eventually fall over. That's kind of how I feel sales is right now. Is like I'm getting them to the finish line, but it's like I'm holding on to their legs and they're dragging me until they eventually fall over. So that's my biggest challenge at the moment. And talking to a lot of my clients, I feel like my clients are having similar challenges this year.
Could a response to that be increase your retention rates so high to 100% that you don't need new business? Is that a feasible response?
It all depends on what your goal is. If you
Yeah,
want to grow, no, because just retaining your customers keeps you where you're at.
right.
If you want a lifestyle business, then that's a great, I have a client of mine that's 5 million in revenue and they want to grow to 6 million and never be bigger. So that strategy would work there. I have another client of mine that's 5 million in revenue and wants to grow to 100 million. So you always need a new business machine. And the other part
How,
is, yeah,
yeah, no, no, please finish.
when I talk about my first agency, which I mentioned was not a success, I quoted down in 2001, I
Mm,
lost 80% of my revenue in 1 month. It was 3 clients. And uh, my big learning from that is when you win a big client, you got to invest in winning your next big client because you never, the only thing I tell people with certainty is it might be tomorrow, it might be 50 years from now, but I promise you, every client you have, you will eventually lose. And so if you know that you're going to lose your client at some point, you better be investing in winning that next client.
yeah, that's very, very good advice. I'm just thinking, I'm the same age as you. In
Yeah.
1996, I was 21 years old. I didn't play rugby, but I I went to a school that did play rugby, and my
Yeah.
school had 600 students. So if 1600, your school was tiny, I mean, what was mine? I came from the second city in the UK called Birmingham. Um, John, just a few, this is a really great conversation. I just want to touch on AI before the quickfire questions. The question is, how has AI changed your business? And in particular, how has it changed your lead generation pipeline, the way you generate leads and convert those leads to customers?
Yeah. So, couple things. We are in beta right now with what we're calling an AI CFO Copilot. There's a person named Luca Pacioli who was the inventor of accounting from the 15th century. So the product is called Luca, and we are um, just about to start inviting people into this beta, and it should go to full launch in January. And so we are taking an AI first approach to what we do. So that's one component. We have testing a lead gen AI company right now. So they are doing email marketing at scale. If you asked me a week and a half ago how I thought it was going, we're only about a month and a half into the test. I'd say not well. Last week seemed to be a turning point. So I'll find out if that was an anomaly or if it just takes a little time.
Hmm.
Uh, I, but my content development is a lot of it is developed using AI as a tool to help develop that content faster. So, um, I think it's a really important thing. And here's generally what I tell people about AI is first, if I ask you what you're doing for AI and you're like, well, I hired a guy or we put a committee together, it means that you're really doing nothing. If you can tell me, we just launched XYZ and the next thing we're doing is this, then I know it's real. So like I'll use us as an example. We've launched Luca into beta. It went in, it's been 8 days now. We now are going to integrate our budgeting and forecasting software and QuickBooks to connect to our AI platform. Like we know exactly what we're building, what's next. I have a 5-person team completely dedicated to building this. So what you want is someone who could communicate and actually have a real strategy behind what they're doing.
Mm. I use Kit for my email marketing. I'm wondering which email marketing platform is doing email marketing at scale, you mentioned.
We're using a company called Triarch right now, is what we're testing. So it's a company we hired, and they
Right.
have a bunch of tools and systems that they use.
Okay. John, let's move on to the quick fire question. So the kind of the
Yeah.
first thing that comes to mind. What is your favorite tool or resource for productivity that you couldn't live without? You just couldn't get your working day done without this tool or resource. Could you shine a light on a particular tool
So
for our audience?
this is going to sound very self-promoting, and I apologize for that. But we built a
Not at
budgeting and
all.
forecasting tool called Engine BI, and it really is the foundation of all our decision making. So that is one tool I couldn't live out. And then the other one would probably be Pipedrive, which is our CRM. It's, who I know to call and how, what I need to do from a sales standpoint.
I've heard of Pipedrive, and the other one is your internal tool. Is that a company
Yep,
tool?
it's an
Okay.
internal tool called Engine BI.
So we'll get links to all of these resources out to our audience. What is one mindset shift, John, that has changed everything for you in business? Different way of thinking about something, perhaps contrarian to what you thought before.
I don't know if it's contrarian to what I thought before, but this whole idea of running your company like a professional sports team is hard to do. There's a lot of emotion, in decisions that you have to make sure that it's not clouding you. And I think that that's really important. And then the other part is I really believe in this concept of performance-based cultures. How do you create high intensity within your organization? Because that can become a huge advantage that, uh, gives you an edge over everyone else.
And one action on top of everything else you've said, John, that listeners can take away this week, what would be the one? So listeners, let's just paint a picture. They're struggling with leads, they're struggling to get sales. What is one action they can implement to turn that around?
I'm going to go with two, so I apologize. But the first one
Please.
is never lose a customer due to performance. So you got to constantly be making your product better. And the next one is there is no silver bullet. Like what works for one company might not work for another, but you need to identify one method to acquire customers at scale at a low cost. And if you can't, you're going to struggle. So keep on testing different things. I would recommend channel marketing as your starting point, which is getting people to refer business to you. But until you can figure out that method of acquiring customers, you're not going to be able to scale.
Thank you. Wrapping up, John, what is one key takeaway from all that we've discussed in your journey in business? You've obviously come a long way. You've had a failure. You've then had some successes.
Yeah.
What is one takeaway you'd like to share with our audience as we close?
You need to decide if, especially if you're in a service-based company, do you want to be a CEO or do you want to be an expert at what your trade is? And if you want to be a CEO, you need to make the investments to build the leadership team, to grow everything, to scale it to the next level. And for me, I happen to be an expert in digital marketing. I now happen to be an expert in finance, but I'm a CEO. I'm an entrepreneur first. And so I think having that self-reflection, and I'll add one more, which is whatever job you take, identify the worst part of that job and make sure that you can do it well. So if you think about running a professional service company, 80% of our costs are people. And it's not just people, it's people we love. They're people that we're in the trenches with. And can you make the tough decision when you have to, even though it's emotionally hard? That's the worst part of this job. And so I want everyone to think about what's the worst part of your job and make sure that you can do it.
John, where can our listeners connect with you? What is the best platform to learn more about you, your work, and your expertise?
Yep. So I post minimum of 3 times a week on LinkedIn, so you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can go to fiscaladvocate.com. We have a resource section that has a lot of information. And then lastly, email me at jon@fiscaladvocate.com. I'd love to hear from you.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, John. Let's wrap it up for today's episode of Freelancer Training on how to find more direct clients. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions on the ever-evolving landscape of language and digital marketing. Until next time, as I always say, stay on your game and don't forget to future-proof your career in the AI digital era. Bye from me, your host, Jason Willis-Lee, and thank you once again to my special guest, John Morris.
Here's a fun fact about Jason. Jason is a big Indiana Jones fan. Thanks for tuning in to the How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, why not head over to www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com to access all our tools and resources to monetize and future-proof your freelance translation business. And don't forget to hit the plus button in Apple Podcasts or iTunes, or subscribe in Spotify to be notified when new episodes drop. For regular tips and insights, business strategy, or marketing techniques straight to your inbox, please sign up at www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com.